was about, I'd say 9. And at the time, it was frightening. And it was just as if you would try and imagine it. And I remember crawling underneath a table in the kitchen and crying my heart out. You know, at all this noise, there was bullets you could hear and shouting, just about everything. And everybody was looking at me and couldn't find me. But they eventually did, they found me, and I wouldn't come out. But they coaxed me anyway, and they got me out and got me to bed. But, like, going to bed was, you know, it was stupid going to bed. I mean, you didn't go to bed to sleep then. You just went to bed to lie and listen to all that was going on.
Nearly 15 years ago, British soldiers arrived in Northern Ireland. They came in order to stand between Catholics and Protestants, and soon a peacekeeping mission erupted into one more blood feud, the latest episode in a standoff that has lasted hundreds of years. This added element of the soldiers, plus the Catholic and Protestant fury, quickly became explosive. In a matter of months, the landscape of Northern Ireland became a violent map of riots, assassinations, and bombings. Since 1969, thousands have died in the tiny province of Northern Ireland, both Catholic and Protestant, in an ongoing tragedy the world has come to call the Troubles. And a generation of children has grown up knowing only one world, a world of barricades, bullets, and barbed wire. What happened to those kids who were 6 years old in 1969? Today, they are 20. We went to Belfast to try and understand what has happened to these children who grew older in the shadow of violence. And because we wanted to know what happened to kids who matured in an area where the force of the Troubles struck the hardest, we chose to concentrate on the neighborhood of Ballymurphy, a few blocks filled with people who were Catholic, unemployed, and very strongly opposed to the British government. This, then, is a view seen largely from one side of this barricaded city. Paul Millen is 17. He is a student. He has spent his whole life in the shadow of the Troubles. And both his brother and uncle have been shot during the riots that have torn Northern Ireland apart for years.
What's your earliest memory of what they call the Troubles here?
I was only about 4 years of age, and seen tar and firing. Well,
Tarring and feathering?
Yeah. One night, I was only about 4 years of age, I heard a lot of screaming in the street, and my mother brought me up the street. And seeing a whole crowd, no people, just standing around one man at the lamppost. Just looked down, he was covered in black tar with feathers all over him, boiling tar it was. So he was just lying there, burning away, screaming.
Was he alive?
Yeah, it doesn't kill you, so it doesn't, it's just painful. Great stuff, this buzz.
Paul Millen is at an age when most American kids get a driver's license or go out on a date or begin thinking about getting into college. But Paul Millen's years have been different because they have been lived in Belfast. When he was 9, he was across the street from his house when the IRA shot an informer through the knees. Kneecapping was and is a common form of punishment for informers here in Northern Ireland, a country where the young grow old before their time. Paul Millen lives in the Ballymurphy section of Belfast, a neighborhood of about 3,000 people, a tiny slice of cement and stucco and hard feelings. The area is nearly 100% Catholic, and it is a place where people grow up in the shadow of the gun and grow old surrounded by soldiers. Every house has its own story, every family its own tale of hardship, and every face, young and old, is a physical roadmap of the troubled trip of the last 14 years. The corner at the top of White Rock Road is the center of Ballymurphy's universe, abutted on all sides by other housing projects, Catholic ones like Moyard and Turf Lodge, and Protestant areas like Highfield. Action happens here in an instant. It is a busy area filled with people of all ages who hang and wait and watch as the never-ending parade of soldiers and police vehicles drive by. You see you hit that soldier with the rock? Did you see that? Let me ask you. What if that soldier that you hit with the rock got off the truck and came after you? What would you do?
Run!
In America, kids throw baseballs. In Belfast, they throw stones at soldiers and army trucks. Part of a game played by the young. A game that sometimes results in the ultimate consequence. Wait a minute, did McGuire die?
I died. He's dead. He's died 3 years.
He was 9 when he died.
He's 3 years now since he died.
Did you ever think about him?
A lot.
A lot? Why?
He was his best meal, no?
He was your best friend? You miss him? Who do you blame for him dying?
Brits. The Brits.
The Brits. It is one of the first real phrases a child utters on the playgrounds and street corners of Ballymurphy. It comes out of their mouths like a weapon, and it is aimed at the Army, the British Army. To the people here, an occupation army. Northern Ireland falls under English rule. It is not an independent state. It is not part of the Republic of Ireland. It is a land patrolled and governed from London. And the soldiers, most of them young, are constant, uniformed reminders of English rule. Policemen do not walk the Catholic streets of Belfast without army protection, and the Catholic population feels that both groups, the army and the police, are enemies. There are some 8,000 soldiers in Northern Ireland. There are about 15,000 policemen and members of the Ulster Defence Regiment. Catholic ghettos like Ballymurphy are surrounded by army outposts and police barracks, and someone is always watching. From a tower, through the scope of a rifle, or looking down from one of the army helicopters that are always in the sky above the city. In 1969, new outbreaks of rioting brought British troops. Chaos and violence gripped the country. The government in Belfast and the Protestant police force had been unable to deal with the disorder. Initially, it was the British Army that stood between the Catholics and massacre. So when the soldiers arrived, they were applauded and served tea by Catholic women. Ironically, the first gun battle that soldiers fought was with Protestant extremists. But Northern Ireland quickly became Britain's Vietnam. Originally scheduled to stay only a few months, more troops were sent in as the conflict grew wider. In 1972 alone, more than 100 British soldiers were killed on the streets of Northern Ireland. As the Army's peacekeeping role expanded, Catholics began to view them differently. It became more a battle for turf, and as the troubles worsened, the military presence was seen by Catholics as that of an occupation army, defending and representing Britain, and thus the Protestants. There are no bombs exploding here today. Fear is not permanently etched on the faces of the people who are about on the streets. There aren't a lot of guns around. There are no bonfires in the night. In short, there is not the type of violence that we have grown accustomed to seeing and reading about on television in America. Instead, there is another form of violence present at all times, a lasting and deeper form of violence. Ballymurphy is filled with billboards and slogans, and while violence no longer means a daily bombing or a nightly murder, the memory and feel of violence has been woven into the fabric of life here over the past 14 years. Kathleen Feenan and Lorraine McCann were both brought up across that period of time when bombs and bullets shaped the world's picture of Belfast. And today, both 22 years of age, both married, both have children of their own, and another generation is being raised behind barricades, both real and imaginary.
Well, I was about, I'd say 9 when the trouble started here. And it was very bad. I mean, it was, everyone was out in the street, and there was tear gas and rubber bullets and everything.
Well, it's something you have to get used to, you know. Like, there's nothing we can do about it, you know. Like, me and Harvey couldn't go out and say, stop it, you know, we're going to stop it. And you never know what's going to happen.
Soldiers in the street on a Sunday night, and what looks abnormal to an outsider is absolutely normal to a resident of Belfast. The rumor this evening is that the Army is conducting a house search. Now, did the soldiers come in here tonight?
The Pillar's place. Just for a statement for Rika.
What was the statement about?
Rika was knocked down.
How, you were knocked down?
Maybe girl.
All that had really happened was that a little girl had been hit by a car, and the police had come to take a report. But in Catholic West Belfast, the police never travel alone. The Army comes with them for protection. And this spectacle, Land Rovers, Armalite rifles, and troops, does not cause one small child one moment of surprise. What do they do in your house at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Raid, pull all the clothes out of the cupboards and search for guns or like that.
Search for what?
Guns.
Did they ever find any?
No. That's a real place.
What do you say when they come in your house?
What do you want?
They're well used to it now.
Are you used to it?
You have to after many years, 14 years of it.
Every other day you might hear someone was shot dead. Or maybe every other month you might hear an explosion here or there. But other than that, it's just an everyday life.
This steel gate here on the Springfield Road symbolizes, perhaps more than anything else, the Belfast of 1983. It separates an entire people, one neighborhood from another, Protestant Highfield from Catholic Ballymurphy. And in times of trouble, it is claimed that this gate and gates like it all over the city can swing shut, and it is claimed seal off Catholic West Belfast within 5 minutes. The Highfield area of Belfast, 500 yards from Ballymurphy and almost entirely Protestant. Many of the people in Highfield, like their Catholic neighbors across the road, are poor, but there are differences. Here, the flag is British, and rather than being a symbol of occupation, it is a symbol of pride. There is one other big difference. In Highfield, police are seldom needed, and when they are, they do not need soldiers to protect them. Police Superintendent Bill Wilson.
But a policeman can go into Highfield for the most part and know that he'll come out quite safely. Unfortunately, we haven't reached the stage where a policeman can go in every day into Ballymurphy and know that he'll come out safely on foot.
In Highfield, people might have friends who are Catholic or have grown up with Catholic neighbors, but for a Protestant from Highfield to visit a Catholic in Ballymurphy today is to run a risk. Jim Woods from Highfield.
You've seen it all happen. You've grown up through it. You know that there's a tremendous split in this city and in this, if you can call it a nation. I mean, this is your country. What do you think of all of this?
think it's all been mistakes that they made in the past that nobody's really tried to fix them up again. And you've got a few extremists on each side that keep stirring it up. Both sides stir it up and say this, say the other thing. And it ends up that nobody wants to talk to anybody. You're Protestant, you stay the Protestant part, and Catholic stayed in the Catholic part while I was growing up myself.
The division of faith is a constant of Irish history. It reaches back hundreds of years. The last 15 have only accentuated the problems. For centuries, the north of Ireland had been the area where most Protestants lived. They were wealthier than Catholics. They outnumbered Catholics, and their ties and loyalty were with Protestant England. The South, after years of struggle, won its independence from Great Britain in 1921. Then the Irish Free State, with a Catholic majority, was formed. The North, with a Protestant majority, broke off and remained British. Today, Protestants still control the Northern Ireland economy, and Catholics still remain at a disadvantage. The Troubles began anew in 1969 with civil rights marches aimed at unemployment, marches that soon turned violent. Mixed neighborhoods, Catholic and Protestant, disappeared. By 1970, cement barriers and barbed wire barricades were thrown up to keep Catholics in and Protestants out. In 1983, a person's address is virtual proof of their religion, and rioting often ignites along a fire line that divides Protestant from Catholic. Jim Irvin is 23. He lives in Highfield, delivers coal for a living. At 11, he was rioting in the streets.
Ratting was fun.
What is it?
What?
What is it? Explain what it is.
Ratting?
Yeah.
Well, it's, say maybe 50 blokes. No, 50 prods, 50 takes, having a good go at each other.
With what?
Well, sticks, stones, petrol bombs, battles, you name it. And then the Brits come along and spoil the fun.
So it's sort of like a sport?
Ah, well, I'd like to put it down there.
At 17, he had a gun and was committing armed robberies. At 18, he was in prison.
What's LPOW stand for?
Loyalist prisoner of war.
Jim Irvin calls himself a loyalist prisoner of war, loyal to the British Crown. He says his crime is just one part, one act in a continuing conflict.
Where's that? How do you work
Was the guy you were robbing a Catholic?
Was indeed.
Then that classifies you as a prisoner of war?
Well, you're doing time for Protestants.
Did you know he was a Catholic?
I did indeed.
That's why you robbed him.
Basically.
On these long northern summer nights, the sky holds light well past 10 o'clock, and the evening is given over to bands and marches and speeches. But this is no ordinary parade, and these kids are not part of an ordinary midsummer celebration. This crowd, these people, these youngsters are all celebrating a battle that took place 300 years ago. Then, the Protestant army of King William of Orange defeated the Catholic forces of King James II. It is a battle that is still being fought, and tonight, the memory of that victory is alive here in Highfield and throughout Northern Ireland.
We pray unashamedly for the defeat and destruction of the Irish Republican Army. We pray, Lord, that you'll keep Ulster firm within the Union.
Ulster, as Northern Ireland is often called, is a sacred province for City Councilman George Seawright.
But the Protestants of Ulster will continue to live here forever, and we will live to see the day when the enemies of Ulster will be totally and absolutely destroyed. And then together we will build an Ulster that our children can enjoy, and please God, our children's children.
Unlike America, where the 4th of July is a celebration of unity, the Protestant commemoration in July and its Catholic counterpart in August are meant to separate the community, to summon up memories of divisions, to reinforce the fact that people belong to different religious factions. And the young children who listen intently also march and learn the bitter lesson taught by their parents, that Northern Ireland is a collection of old wounds and that its people are prisoners of the past. There are exceptions to the history of hatred. In some areas, the fighting among faiths is restricted to leather and rosin and parents who pass on a knowledge of how to bob and weave in a ring instead of run and shoot on a street. Geordie Douglas is one such parent. He is a fighter who has become a Belfast legend by teaching kids that training for a 3-rounder is better than giving yourself up to the longer bout of history. And he's passed this belief on to his son Paul, who wants to be a professional fighter.
Where boxing's concerned, it's where two sides can mix and enjoy themselves. You see all the Protestant and Catholics mixing during the fights because they don't want any trouble, they don't want nothing to do with it. Just, they want to train themselves, be able to mix, trying to get all the troubles out of Belfast.
Somehow, boxing has managed to remain unaffected by the war. At the height of the fighting a decade ago, Catholic and Protestant managed to fight in a ring without setting off a riot. Protestants today sit next to Catholics in arenas and boxing clubs. But sports are an exception. In the other fight, the more deadly one, the rules are still the same, and people still know there is no neutral corner in the neighborhood. How'd you lose your tooth?
Kicked out.
Yeah. Fighting? A walk off your own turf can mean you lose a tooth and a fight. This is all part of the feel of Belfast, and the skinheads and punkers on both sides of the barricades are part of the city's look. Junior Lavery, a Catholic, ended up in downtown Belfast one day where he found both Protestants and trouble. Who started the fight?
We were somewhere where we shouldn't have been.
You were somewhere where you shouldn't have been. How many of them were there?
About 20 of them.
And just how many of you?
About 10 of us.
Does that happen often?
What happens outside? Usually on a Monday night and a Saturday and a Sunday night.
Sloan's, a club in the heart of Ballymurphy where politics and Guinness are a constant menu. The music is haunting and the words are full of sentiment. The heroes are hunger strikers and others out of history, people who run a range of reputation from Bobby Sands to Che Guevara. West Belfast is like a classroom where lessons of oppression and legends of animosity are passed from generation to generation.
From about the age of 4, you're taught to hate Brits.
Paul Millen says young Catholics learn to hate the British. In primary school and in their homes, they are taught that the history of Ireland is a history of oppression. And this message is reinforced by everything that young people see and hear. A large part of the history of Irish resistance to British rule is the history of the Irish Republican Army. It was a dominant force in the 1916 struggle for independence. Over the years, it faded from prominence. When the Troubles erupted in 1969, the IRA watched from the sidelines, an army with few weapons, few members, and not much of a role in the North. But as Catholics became more threatened, new recruits built up the IRA, and as its numbers increased, so did its weapons and money. For the past decade, the IRA has waged a classic guerrilla war that has included attacks on specific military targets. It has also included assassinations and random bombings that have alienated many Catholics because they have resulted in the deaths of innocent civilians. The British and Protestant majority see the IRA as terrorists. Some Catholics view them as freedom fighters. Today, the IRA is a force to be reckoned with in Ireland, and they are only one of several secret paramilitary organizations, Protestant and Catholic, who wage war in this troubled land.
Would it bother you if your kids grew up wanting to go out and shoot and bomb the Brits?
No, it wouldn't bother me. It wouldn't. It would bother me if they wanted to go and join the Brits. Because if they'd ever tried it, they would break their legs.
Q Fitzsimmons has learned his lessons well. He is from a family that has long fought for an independent Ireland and spent a lot of time in jail. At 10, he was an acolyte in the service of the Irish Republican Army. Today, he's helping to open a youth center. But behind him is 4 years in prison, and with him still is a deep belief in the cause, a belief in the gun, and a belief in the bomb.
Have you ever shot anybody?
Yes.
Who?
You can't say that. They're running about the day, they turn around and get me.
Did you kill someone?
No, haven't went that far.
Would you like to?
I would.
Who?
Brits, peelers, UDA, UDR, Protestants if they have to. Would kill Protestants.
And it wouldn't matter what their lives are all about?
No. They're against the people, against the IRA. They shouldn't be here. Best place for them is on the ground.
If, when you were in the IRA, if you were told to go down and plant a bomb in the emergency room at the Queen Vic, at the hospital,
yeah,
would you do it?
Yes. Would be done. I'd put a bomb on anywhere.
In the emergency room of the hospital?
Yes. If I was told to do it, I would do it.
Now, a bomb doesn't know the difference between a Catholic and a Protestant.
Yeah.
How do you accept that?
Just a war on. Just like any war. There's a war on. Civilians have to get injured. It can't be helped.
And as far as I heard, we were told there was 3 bombs on the train. But the conductor said he kicked them off. So me and my sister was fighting on the train, like a brother and sister would do.
In 1976, an IRA bomb made Paul Millen a civilian casualty of war.
Next minute, I sees a package sitting under one of the chairs. So I was over and looks in it, and I thought it was a clock. So I just left it alone. As I was walking away to sit down, I seen a flash of light. Next thing I knew, I was in hospital. I was nearly dead. It was in a bomb. That's how the woman with the bomb was sitting underneath. She was blown to bits. I mean, they couldn't find her whole body. And I was lying in hospital for over 2 months, near dead. Scars all over me. And I had no hair. The hair was burnt off me. The scars, you can still see the scars here on the side of my face.
3 weeks before Paul Millen spoke, a few yards away, an IRA bomb exploded, turning a lamppost into a hurricane of shrapnel. The bomb killed a British soldier. He was 20 years old.
Big problem at the present time is that it's not there are so many explosions, but there are an awful lot of alerts, even hoax alerts. For instance, in Belfast on a Friday evening, you can get anything up to 8 happening simultaneously. We don't have the capacity to deal with them. So we employ the Army, and the Army here are here to assist the police. The Army have the capacity to deal with bombs, with explosives, and explosive scares of that nature.
Do you know anything about it, or? Green, please stand over. Roger, have we any information on the 2 other vehicles which are parked with the suspect vehicle with the black man over?
Shaftesbury Square, central Belfast, rush hour on a business day. The people passing by in the cars and buses seem to think things are perfectly normal. things are perfectly normal for Belfast because behind us, down this street, there is a truck, a blue truck, parked outside of a police station. A bomb warning has been called in, and both the police, the Army, and the bomb squads have responded. The Army has learned over the years that it's better to lose a machine than a man, so robots go about the task of disarming bombs while life goes on a mere 100 yards away. People barely pause in the course of business to observe a Belfast fact of life. Today, there were 5 separate bomb scares in Belfast. 5 abandoned vehicles placed at 5 different points throughout the city. 5 separate disruptions, a part of the daily and accepted pattern of life in a combat zone. No bombs exploded here today. There were 5 false alarms, but with these bomb scares, the IRA had informed all of Belfast that the troubles were not going away. Tattoos and leather are part of the walking body count of hate and division in the North, and the products of this division often end up behind the walls of the country's prisons. Ballymurphy, as small as it is, has dozens doing time in jail for what they consider to be political crimes. Northern Ireland's prisons have been an explosive and controversial issue since the beginning of the Troubles. Laws concerning arrest and detention, trial by jury, and rules of evidence are different here than in the rest of Great Britain. Part of the controversy comes from the fact that the paramilitaries insist their acts are political, not criminal. The government has refused to grant this special status, calling them terrorists instead. This argument became a headline in 1981 when Bobby Sands and 10 other hunger strikers took to the blanket and starved to death in protest over being labeled criminals. Even the name of a prison is political here. People who call this place by its official name, the Maze, are generally loyalists, Protestants. Calling it Longkesh is an indication that your faith is Catholic and your sympathy is with the idea of a united Irish Republic. In September of 1983, 38 members of the Irish Republican Army escaped from this prison in a well-planned and well-executed flight that captured the imagination of Republican sympathizers and brought fresh cries from London and Belfast about the need to crack down on terrorists. It was an escape that only added fuel to the fire, only added to the romantic appeal that some hold about the IRA. How old was Geordie when he was interned?
22. He's now 28. I was back in 78.
And what was it for? What happened?
He was accused of having laid a bomb up here in the Hannistown Road, you know, in a dustbin. It was a booby trap for paratroopers.
Today, Mary Murtaugh's son Geordie is 28. He joined the IRA as a teenager. He was caught and arrested and convicted of such multiple offenses that he got 286 years. He is eligible for parole in 1990.
It's awful heartbreaking, honestly, you know. But I'd not belonged to 1990, you know.
It's a lot of Christmases out of a young man's life.
True, he spent 6 away now, you know, he's another 6 to go. Has another 6 to go. And all he's allowed is 5 postcards, 5 Christmas cards, 5 photographs. That's their lot. Oh, well. Come on, you over. Is there anything else you'd like to know?
Do you think he'll want to leave the country when he gets out?
No way, no way. No way. Would you leave? Maybe leave if the British Army are away when he comes out. Maybe they'll go home, you know. But if the British Army are here, he won't leave.
While the law calls them terrorists and families call them heroes, semantics can't hide the fact that the jails are packed with young men. And every day, buses filled with visitors leave from Protestant and Catholic areas.
We will not forsake them, our brave sons and daughters, the hundreds who lie behind. fight to release them. We know that for us they have sacrificed all.
I've seen children going into the prisons to visit their fathers and brothers and sisters, and I'm amazed at how good the children are and how they come to recognize that their own fathers and brothers are very honourable people, and they come to recognize that this is a price that must be paid if you want to do anything in life. You don't get anything good without suffering for it.
Desi Wilson is a Catholic priest whose political activism led to a falling out with the church. So today, his parish is in the streets and his altar is in his home.
I'd like to remember most especially all the people who are trying to bring peace and justice into this country, and very especially the people who have suffered for it. Very especially all the people who are in prison.
What's going to happen to these kids?
Well, I think the children are facing a lifetime without employment, without adequate money, and without a sense of dignity, and without being able to contribute something to their own community.
Love your neighbour as yourself. If you go snapping at each other and tearing each other to pieces, you had better watch or you will destroy the whole community.
Their lives must be saved, and I'm afraid for these children because stones will turn into guns, and that happens very quickly.
There are other barriers in this town. Barriers made of things stronger even than steel. Internal barriers that result in people who feel the chances of getting a job are absolutely minimal. People who become hopeless. People who feel that walking from one neighborhood to another is absolutely impossible. And people, large numbers of them, who come to form an almost automatic dependence on the dole.
What do you think you'll be doing 3 years from now?
Brew.
The dole.
Aye. There's nothing else to do, is there?
So now you're on the dole.
It's the best place for you.
You really believe that's the best place for you? What do you think the chances are of your getting a good job?
Very little.
Do you want to work?
For the right pay.
Do you think you could ever find a job here in Belfast for the right pay?
Don't know. Be hard.
Do you know what ambition means? Do you know what the word ambition means? What does it mean?
Some crap about the future. What you want to do with your life.
Northern Ireland's economic future does appear bleak. Few jobs and large numbers on the dole are almost certain. Shipbuilding used to be the spine of the North's economy. Harland and Wolff, where the Titanic was built, once employed as many as 25,000 people. Today, that number is below 7,000. Like the rest of Great Britain, Belfast has a crippled economy, and block after block of burned-out businesses discourage anyone thinking of starting up. The young are especially vulnerable. Half the population is under 25. The economy, a sore spot for Protestants, is a catastrophe for Catholics. Even before 1969, they faced economic discrimination. When the area's largest employer, the shipyard, had 10,000 people working, only 400 were Catholic. Martin Sherlock is one young man who is determined not to have his life bounded or limited by the troubles around him. He is a 19-year-old student. He is smart, and he thinks more about the future than he does about the past. Instead of being a participant in street corner action, he attends Queen's University in central Belfast and studies math and computer science.
Why do you think that there are so many people your age and younger, and certainly a lot older, who seem to have no drive? None.
I think the people that are a lot older fell into a trap that when they were my age, jobs were easy to get. But the jobs that they were able to get were all the menial jobs, really. And the younger ones, I think, have grown up with the idea that they're not going to get a job anyway, that there's something wrong with them because they come from here.
You don't have to be a millionaire to live like one. 2 pound for 35 pence. You don't have to be a millionaire to live like one.
This is the dole line at the White Rock Post Office, people waiting to cash their welfare check. Along with an air of violence, poverty has always been a major fact of life in Ballymurphy. In the early 1970s, when the economy was at full employment, over half the heads of household in Ballymurphy were without a job. Today, that figure has swelled to almost 9 out of 10. And in Protestant Highfield, over a quarter of the men are out of work.
Well, load the Irish, but it gives them one of their Jews.
What? Clean your nose. Clean your nose. Good girl. Ta-ta. You get it on a Friday morning. You go to the post office and you get it changed. In total, everything that has to be paid out of it, I'm left with between 25 and 30 pounds out of that to live on to the following Friday.
Both women get $100 a week welfare money. Both have a husband and 2 kids. They stretch that check to cover rent, food, and clothing. Their medical bills are paid by the state. They live a life without frills. No movies, no dining out in the town, no car. The dole locks them into a shared existence with everyone in their block. There is no keeping up with the Joneses in Ballymurphy because the Joneses are on welfare too, getting the same amount of money, holding the same inevitable outlook on both the present and the future. People here are spokes in a huge welfare wheel, a wheel that rides over initiative and deprives most of thinking that there might be a job.
What are you afraid of?
I'm always afraid of not having enough. Like, always, totally. You know, I always just want to have enough food in the cupboard and for kids to have clothes. I don't care what else they don't have, because you can make it up in other ways, you know. There's plenty of love and things like that, but I'm always afraid I'm going hungry. That's the only thing I worry about. Like, I don't care what way the house and all is. If it's clean and tidy and the kids have good food in their stomachs, you know. As long as they're all right, really, I'm all right.
But a lot of Catholics are nowhere near all right. Unemployment among them has reached epidemic proportions, and Belfast is like any other city with large numbers of jobless people. When a man or a woman does not work, they sometimes lose a sense of their own identity and their own worth. And here in West Belfast, scarred by unemployment, the identity of these people does not come from their professions, painters, plumbers, or plasterers. It comes from where they live, in neighborhoods like this, in Moyard, in Ballymurphy, in the Falls. That answers the question, who they are. They are also prisoners of time. They spend whole days playing on fields instead of working in factories.
I think that's why there's so many kids today that drink and go out and steal. Because years ago, there was an excuse made for them. You know, the mass were saying, well, the troubles are on, you know, you have to give them a wee bit of leeway. But now it's got out of hand, and they really have no sense of responsibility. Because there was really, they got away with it. There was the excuse that the troubles. And drink's no problem to kids now. You know, you see kids of 14 and 15, and they'll go and they'll sit to 4 and 5 in the morning, drinking.
You get joyriders every night. You get fellas, even wee boys, 14, whatever, walking about glue sniffing. You see them sitting over there, glue sniffing, and they cause more trouble. I mean, when they get high on that, God knows what to do. I mean, they put windows in and they do this and that, and then they're stealing cars and they're wrecking cars. And that there is more trouble, I think, than what you get from anything else here.
In a country where disorder, death, and unemployment are the norm, the young do not escape by boat or plane. They travel by illusion, by drugs, and by liquor. And when the high has ended, there is still the cruel reality of Belfast. Thomas Riley, 22 years old, part of the time on the dole, part of the time on the road, a worker with local rock groups. His mother calls him a happy-go-lucky kid, a kid who likes to fool around and drive around. On August 9th of this year, Riley, like thousands of other Catholic men, went to cash his welfare check at the White Rock post office. But August 9th is no ordinary day in the North. It is the anniversary of the start of internment, when the government began arresting and jailing people without trial. On the morning of August 9th, 1971, 300 Catholics were picked up and detained by the Army. Some were members of the IRA, but many others were not, and the reaction was intense. Every year since, internment has been memorialized on the 9th. And on this August 9th at 4:30 in the afternoon, Thomas Riley, according to eyewitnesses, got into an argument with a soldier. The Army was holding one of Riley's friends. Riley was told to stop arguing and move along. Witnesses say that a soldier aimed his rifle at Riley as he walked away. Someone shouted. Riley turned toward the soldier. The soldier fired a single shot, and Thomas Riley, unarmed, was dead. His death ignited violence that lit the night sky. Catholics hijacked cars and buses and set them on fire. The Army and police were met with a constant wave of rocks and baubles. Dozens of people were arrested. On August 10th, more than 1,000 people marched in silent protest over the killing of Thomas Riley. An 18-year-old British soldier was arrested and charged with his murder.
Once any trouble that's over here now, once that ends, I think it'll take at least 50 years before people start trusting each other again. And by that time, I'm almost sure that there'll be a different cause for trouble.
That's pretty depressing.
It is. But you learn to live with it, the way you learn to live with the trouble up here.
You've been 2 months in a hospital, you almost got killed, your brother's been shot, your uncle's been shot. What makes you stay here?
I was born here, and I love this country. Just love the life here, the people here. Just love to live.
But the soldiers are here, there's repression here, there's discrimination here. In all likelihood, you're not going to be able to get a good job here. Why stay?
I don't know. I just don't know why I want to stay here. I mean, you just look around, there's things you wouldn't see here because you aren't born here, but to us, this is home.
And home means coping with a life where politics and religion are woven together. For the young, it means living in a land where people firmly believe they belong to a fated race, and where they are taught that the mission is to conserve, endure, and never to break. Aggression and anger are passed down from generation to generation. Hope lies in the myths, the romance that surrounds this cycle of violence. A cycle that sometimes slows but never stops. A cycle that is a fact of life for a generation just coming of age.